The 30th of January, 1933, Germany. Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazi Party, is appointed Chancellor of Germany and aims to lead the German master race to victory in the racial struggle against those deemed as inferior peoples, especially the Jews. The Nazi regime quickly begins to restrict the civil and human rights of the Jewish people and gradually excludes them from professions, businesses, and public spaces. During this time, propaganda campaigns create an atmosphere tolerant of violence against Jews and prepare the German population for harsher measures, such as mass deportations and eventually genocide. Between 1933 and 1945, Nazi Germany and its European allies will establish more than 44,000 camps and other incarceration sites including ghettos. The perpetrators will use these locations for forced labor, detention of people deemed to be enemies of the state, and the mass murder of millions. One such perpetrator is Gustav Willhaus. Gustav Willhaus was born on the 2nd of September 1910 in Forbach, then part of the German Empire. He came from a Protestant family, and after completing elementary school, trained as a construction mechanic. From 1924 to 1928, Willhaus was a member of the Sturmabteilung, or the SA, which was the Nazi paramilitary force also known as the Stormtroopers or the Brown Shirts for the color of their uniform. From 1928 to 1929, Willhaus worked in France, and upon returning to Germany, he joined the Hitler Youth, which was the Nazi-organized youth movement. The Hitler Youth was a paramilitary organization designed to train boys as future fighters and soldiers for war. As an official organization of the Nazi state, the Hitler Youth had a military structure at the local, regional, and national levels. The boys practiced military drills, learned how to handle weapons, worked on farms in the summer, and participated in competitive sports, especially boxing. Some boys enjoyed the physical challenge, competition, and camaraderie. Others, however, found the constant focus on preparing for war and sacrificing themselves for the fatherland very difficult. In June 1932, Willhaus joined the Nazi Party, and the following month he became a member of the SS. He had a reputation as a street brawler, and during a street fight sustained serious injuries that forced him to stay in the hospital for an extended period. On the 30th of January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg. During this period, Willhaus served in the 1st Battalion of the 85th SS Regiment, stationed in Saarbrücken. His involvement included active participation in propaganda and agitation activities leading up to the Saar Territory referendum, held in January 1935. The Saar Territory referendum was a plebiscite to determine the future sovereignty of the Saar Basin, a region located between France and Germany. The Saar had been placed under the administration of the League of Nations for 15 years following World War I by the Treaty of Versailles. In the referendum, voters were asked whether the Saar should remain under the League of Nations administration, return to Germany, or become part of France. To the surprise of neutral observers as well as the Nazis themselves, over 90% voted in favor of reuniting with Germany. Despite his severe spelling difficulties, and some reports even describing Willhaus as illiterate, in 1935 he became the sales manager for the National Socialist newspaper, Westmark. In October 1935, Willhaus married Elisabeth Riedel, a worker at the Nazi newspaper, and the marriage produced one daughter. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. The following year, Willhaus was enlisted in the Waffen-SS, the military branch of the SS. In November 1941, holding the rank of SS Untersturmführer, which was equivalent to second lieutenant, Willhaus was transferred to Lviv, today the largest city in western Ukraine, then part of the general government in German-occupied Poland. During his time there, he became a deputy manager at the local branch of the German Armaments Works, or DAW. With the backing of SS Brigadier Fritz Katzmann, commander of the SS and Police District Galicia, Willhaus quickly gained autonomy from his former superior, Fritz Gerbauer. By March 1942, he had assumed command as the head of a labor camp for Jews, located next to, but separate from the DAW facilities at 134 Janowska Street in the northwest part of the city, known as the Janowska camp. Willhaus moved into a villa at the heart of the camp, and in the summer of 1942, his wife and 3-year-old daughter joined him there. A staff of 12 to 15 SS officers administered the Janowska camp, while the majority of the guards were Ukrainians who had volunteered for service with the SS. Living conditions in the camp were brutal, and often inmates were given meaningless tasks designed to exhaust them before their deaths. Many prisoners chose to end their lives by hanging themselves in the barracks rather than endure further suffering. Upon returning from work, prisoners were forced to run back into the camp. Willhaus and his assistant, Friedrich Wartzog, singled out Jews showing signs of fatigue, leaving them between rows of barbed wire to die. Each morning, all prisoners faced a roll call inspection by an SS officer, and those who did not pass were immediately executed. One high-ranking SS officer had a particular habit during roll calls. If he disliked a prisoner's appearance, he would shoot him in the back of the neck. Each SS officer had their preferred method of killing Jews. Victims were murdered for minor offenses, working slowly or without reason, with the execution method depending on the mood of the perpetrator. Methods included shooting, beating, choking, hanging, crucifixion upside down, or with knives and axes. Women also suffered brutal deaths, often being beaten or fatally stabbed. In the Janowska camp, the Nazis conducted torture and executions to music. The orchestra members, inmates of the camp, were required to always play the same tune, Tango of Death. Among them were noted Jewish musicians from the pre-war Polish Lviv Municipal Theatre. During hangings, the Nazis ordered the orchestra to play tango, and during tortures, the musicians had to play the foxtrot. Some evenings, the orchestra musicians were made to play under the camp commander's windows for hours on end. Shortly before the camp's liquidation, the Nazis ordered 40 orchestra musicians to form a circle. Guards stood around them tightly and commanded them to play. First, the orchestra conductor, Jakob Mundt, was executed. Then the Nazi commandant ordered the musicians to come to the center of the circle one by one, put their instruments on the ground, strip naked, and be murdered by a shot to the head. Willhaus, as camp commandant, not only issued murderous orders, but also personally tortured and killed Jews on numerous occasions. He would often let sick inmates freeze to death during roll calls, or had them placed in water barrels. Witness accounts depict Willhaus killing his victims without hesitation, yet without visible enthusiasm, treating murder as routine. On Adolf Hitler's 54th birthday, on the 20th of April 1943, he personally shot 54 Jews. For entertainment, Willhaus would shoot at prisoners from the terrace of his villa. Willhaus's wife Elisabeth was not personally disturbed by the sound of gunfire. In fact, she enjoyed it and often took the rifle into her own hands. She passed the long hours of being a housewife by standing on the terrace and shooting at innocent Jewish prisoners working in her garden. Her young daughter often watched her in amusement and out of naivety, even clapped when her mommy managed to hit an innocent Jewish prisoner with the first shot. The camp underwent a change in March 1942, when the mass deportation of Jews from the eastern Galicia region to the Bełżec death camp began. Janowska was used as a transit camp, and some Jews were kept there, while others were deported to Bełżec, where they were murdered in gas chambers. Continual selections took place at Janowska, and those deemed unfit for work were also deported to Bełżec. Willhaus also participated in the mass executions of thousands of Lviv Jews, which took place in the Piaski ravine, directly next to the Janowska camp. In his villa, Willhaus and his wife collected possessions of the murdered, including high-quality clothing, artworks, and various valuable items. Willhaus remained in constant conflict with his former superior, Fritz Katzmann, who still served as the head of the Lviv branch of the DAW. Both offices continually engaged in disputes over authority, competed for laborers and materials, and sought to harm each other in various ways, including murdering prisoners belonging to the other. Their mutual animosity was so intense that they often disregarded even basic military protocols in their interactions. Additionally, Willhaus named his dog Fritz, the same name as Gerbauer's, and developed a habit of showering the animal with the most elaborate curses. In June 1942, Willhaus was awarded the War Merit Cross Second Class for his contributions to the establishment of the Janowska camp. The evacuation of the Janowska camp began in November 1943. As the Nazis attempted to destroy the traces of mass murder, they forced the prisoners to open the mass graves and burn the bodies. On the 19th of November 1943, these prisoners organized an uprising and a mass escape attempt. A few succeeded in escaping, but most were recaptured and killed. The SS staff and their local auxiliaries murdered at least 6,000 surviving Jews from the various forced labor camps in Galicia when the Janowska camp was liquidated in November 1943. At that time, Willhaus was no longer the Janowska camp commandant, as from July 1943, he had been assigned to a Croatian SS volunteer division and later served with other Waffen-SS units. The Soviets liberated Lviv in July 1944 and carried out a number of investigations into the war crimes committed at Janowska camp. The Soviet Extraordinary State Commission determined that over 200,000 people were murdered at Janowska during its operation. The ashes, mixed with crushed bones, were buried to a depth of 2 meters in various places. After the war, Leon Wells gave first-hand testimony about the atrocities the Nazis had committed in the camp. He was a Jewish prisoner who was forced by the Nazis to exhume mass graves and burn the bodies, and later managed to escape the Janowska camp during the November 1943 uprising. Leon told the commission that between the 6th of June and the 20th of November 1943, his team burned more than 310,000 bodies, including 170,000 in the immediate vicinity of the camp and another 140,000 or more in the area of eastern Lviv. He even testified at Adolf Eichmann's trial in 1961 and repeated the claim of a few 100,000 victims. In the aftermath of these horrific events, attention turned to individual acts of plundering. Because Willhaus stole countless valuable items from the Jewish victims at the camp, there was an investigation case led against him. However, in mid-August 1944, the case was dropped. In November of the same year, Willhaus was promoted to SS Obersturmführer, which was equivalent to first lieutenant. Willhaus was never tried for the atrocities he had committed, but justice eventually caught up with him. He was 34 years old when he was killed in action on the 29th of March 1945 in Steinfischbach, 60 kilometers northeast of Frankfurt. There were no tears shed for Gustav Willhaus.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.